right, we back in here. Chelsea home to Brighton in Premier League, match week 6, and we're going to get into it. I wanted to start with, however, the Lincoln City match midweek in the Carabao Cup, a 2-0 victory, 2-1 victory, I should say. And in all honesty, it was a dreadful performance. There was a lot of rotation, and I didn't even do a preview for the match. I expected maybe that it would be a routine victory. That's what I had hoped for and honestly expected. And after watching the match, I was like, oh, wow, maybe I should do a match review. But I figured I would address it quickly in the match preview before Brighton. So quickly, we saw a lot of rotation in the match, and it was just I think Malo Gusto said they played like kids in the first half, and I think that was the most accurate description. They were dominated physically um, against the side you wouldn't expect that. You know, to start the two quick points, the main points that I had was that Trevor Chalobah and Wesley Fofana started as the center back pairing again after Manchester United, and we'll get into that in a little bit for the match preview. But it clearly does not work. Saw it multiple times. The manager has said it, and it again proved why that pairing just isn't the best available. I know Josh Antipong was scheduled to probably start this match with one of those two as his partner, but he fell ill, so we didn't see him. Estevao didn't start as well, so I expect and hope that he would be in line to be in the first 11 for the Brighton match. And I think that 100% should be the expectation with Cole Palmer out injured. We'll get into that in a bit. And the other thing is that even though Rob Sanchez has his bozo moments and ultimately is probably not good enough to be the starting keeper for Chelsea, if the expectations are to challenge for the league and the Champions League. But Philip Jorgensen, I think, with this match alone, proved that he just is not ever going to be the number one keeper at Chelsea. And the only real way he sees any consistent run as the number one goalkeeper is if Rob Sanchez is hurt or is just so dreadful that they have no choice but to turn with him. But he was honestly the worst player on the pitch, in my opinion, against Lincoln City. There was some criticism for guys like Tyreek George before he scored and then assisted, and I tend to agree. He's not a natural striker. I'll get into that later. And then in the air, like, just the team were dominated, and it was in large part due to, I think, Philip Jorgensen just flapping at the ball multiple times on crosses and long throws, and just in general causing chaos in the box by his inability to be as secure as Rob Sanchez in the air is, honestly. And that's unfortunate. But uh, in any case, we're going to move on to the fixture that, in my opinion, is more important than the Lincoln City one. You know, the Lincoln City loss, if it had happened, would have been embarrassing. But I think for the campaign in this season, I think Brighton is potentially more important. And hopefully, it represents a turn in form, which it might be a little bit of a struggle considering some of the injuries and the team news we'll get on to in a second. But, you know, the vibes and the feeling around the team are a little bit down over the past 10 days. Well, really since turning from the international break. Did 3 matches. One match being that Lincoln City match is where we saw the team secure a win, but a draw against Brentford, a loss against Bayern Munich that, in my opinion, was largely self-inflicted. And so, as a result, this match is, I think, a necessary 3 points, especially with Liverpool being the match after, right before the international break. And it'll be the toughest match and the biggest test of the season so far, considering the fact that they've won every one of their matches. They haven't looked the best, but we'll get into that down the line. And then, Benfica coming after, you would think rolling into the second Champions League game, you would want a bit of momentum. So, um, without key defenders and the best attacker, arguably the best player in the team in Cole Palmer, being out and from now until the international break, it'll be a real test of some of the depth that Chelsea have brought in over the past couple seasons. And to get into it, we're going to start by the looking at the team news for each squad. So this past week, and specifically in the manager Enzo Maresca's pre-match press conference, we saw that he mentioned that Tosin, Adarabioyo, and Cole Palmer will both be out until after the international break, due to a calf issue and recurring groin issues for Cole Palmer, respectively. And in addition to that, Wesley Fofana, who just came back healthy and finally started in two successive matches in a row, Manchester United and Lincoln City, he suffered a concussion in the match due to Philip Jorgensen flapping in the air at the ball and missing and damn near knocking out Wesley Fofana in that match. So he's going to be out until after the international break as well. And that leaves, when we get into the starting lineup, the obvious center back pairing of Josh Achampong and Trevor Chalobah. I think some of the options to cover would, in the case that one of those two are unavailable, would probably be Raul Hato, Reece James, and Marco Correa in that order. I think would be the next in line in the pecking order, because I'm not sure that there's an academy product right now in line to make a spot start in any case, and there aren't any low leverage matches from now until the October international break for that to even happen. And then we also saw Enzo Maresca get a question about Axel Disasi, and there's no chance for him to return. I agree with that notion. I mean, he was left out for a reason, was told to secure a move away for a reason, him not being good enough, and to bring him in now. This isn't a situation where that makes any sense, in my opinion, as much as he might be needed in the immediate term. I just don't think it would make much sense, considering the fact that Raheem Sterling is also in that same situation, and so that would open the door potentially for him as well. And I just think when you have multiple players in the same sort of situation, it doesn't make sense. I know we saw Ben Chilwell make that type of appearance in the Carabao Cup last season before his loan move away to Crystal Palace, but I think that was more of a send off and like an appreciation for Ben Chilwell and what he's done for the club, and more of a goodbye sort of appearance for him. He was also training with the first team consistently, I believe, at that point, just wasn't in favor. Or maybe, I can't remember. In preseason, maybe he was a part of the bomb squad and then was integrated into the first team when he couldn't secure a move away. But in any case, I just think that was a different situation for a different type of player who represented something different for the club. But in any case, that team injury news leaves the squad very thin at this point. I mean, at center back, two senior center back options. Cole Palmer, your best attacker, out, as well as, we've mentioned Liam Delap is out long term. Another attacking option, Levi Colwell at the back, out long term. Dario Sugo in midfield, out long term. And so it stretches the team very thin, and that idealized team depth that I think a lot of people have mentioned outside, so people not supporters of the club, I think it shows now that that's kind of false. There are a lot of players on Chelsea's books technically, but in terms of the first team, I think it's a standard 25-man squad or in and around there, and with injuries in the way that Chelsea have seen them, it leaves very restricted options, and I think that'll actually lead to a change in structure potentially, in terms of trying to leave the squad more secure tactically, and I think we may see that. I'll get into that in a little bit. there is a bit of news additionally to Romeo Lavia and Benoit Badiashil's status in terms of returning. So Maresca said that you know they'll be assessed um, before the match to see if they can rejoin the squad, and if not, it'll be the next game, which is a welcome addition because with players continuing to be ruled out injury, um, hopefully they can come back and remain healthy for the time being, so that they can add to the options that Enzo Maresca has for his side. Um, I will get into I think my predicted lineup first before I get into what I could think that means tactically for the match. And so to start with, Rob Sanchez was suspended for the Lincoln City game and is back in contention for selection. And I think he's just going to slide straight back into the lineup just because Philip Jorgensen, in his lone appearance, as I mentioned previously, failed to inspire any confidence in anybody. And I think most importantly, probably failed to inspire any confidence in Enzo Maresca. So I think Rob Sanchez slots right back in there. And then I think that unfortunately speaks for itself. In terms of the back line, I think that picks itself as well. Even at right back, even though there's a little bit of debate, well, not debate, but there's a little bit more willingness to rotate by Enzo Maresca in that position. So to start with, it'll be Reece James at right back. I think Achimpong will be the right center back, Trevor Chalobah the left center back, and Cucurella will be the left back. The reason I specifically mentioned Achimpong on the right and Trevor Chalobah on the left is I think in order to leave Chelsea more defensively solid, I think it would make sense in this match for Reece James to be a part of the back three in possession with Achimpong in the center and Trevor Chalobah on the left. The reason I say that is in Trevor Chalobah's appearances for the club so far this season, I think central center back is just not it for him. And it's going to be Josh Achimpong if he has to start, which he will start, I would imagine, if he's fully back from his illness. And what we saw from Josh Achimpong against Crystal Palace in his lone Premier League start was that while he coped pretty well defensively with Mateta, I've mentioned that before, his passing range was a bit limited in the fact that playing between the lines, he gave the ball away a little bit more than we would like to see. And so as a result, I think playing Reece James as a part of that back three, his passing range and his ability, not only between the lines, but over the top as well, I think will really help the team progress. And so that's why I have it that way. And I have it that way also because Cucurella, I think inverting into midfield, in this match, if I had to predict it, I don't think he'll sit next to Caicedo. I think that'll be one of the other midfield options. I'll get into that in a second. I think Cucurella is going to be more of the guy who inverts and then pushes ahead in order to make runs from midfield. And I think it'll help Chelsea create chances in that way. As for the midfield, right now I have it slated as technically a midfield three, and I'm going to mention them in this group of three, even though it'll probably look a little different in the match. I think Caicedo, Andre Santos, and Enzo Fernandez all start with the hope that Romeo Lavia makes the bench. This may not be what happens in the match, but this is what I would prefer to see. The reason I have it this way is I think we might see a return of like that sort of double pivot instead of leaving Caicedo to be the lone holder in midfield. And I think it would help if it was Moises Caicedo and Andre Santos right next to him in order to help progress the ball, because we see at times Moises Caicedo being marked out of the game and us having to see them play around Moises Caicedo and try to play in behind him and through him into those options in attacking midfield and out wide. And so I think having another midfielder sit next to him will help those little intricate passes to try to beat that opposition's first line of defense, especially against a team where Chelsea are expected to dominate possession. We see a lot of the opposition's attackers playing very narrow, and as a result, making those midfielders try to drift out wide in order to pick up the ball, um, and then to play it out to the wingers, and it kind of funnels everything to the outside. And so, as a result, I think having somebody sit next to Caicedo would really help. I think in this matchup, and then Enzo Fernandez being in there as the 10, I think in this match will also, I think, help with a little bit of the flexibility and interchangeability in terms of swapping roles seamlessly in match. Like if Enzo Fernandez decides to drop in to collect possession, Andre Santos can fill in his place, or Cucurella, or vice versa with those three. And so I think it'll help conjure up some freedom and some creativity for the side that may not be there otherwise without Cole Palmer. And then on the wings, I have it as Estevao and Pedro Neto, um, with Estevao being on the left and Pedro Neto, no, yeah, being on the left and Pedro Neto being on the right, with João Pedro as the striker. We saw against Manchester United that that was actually the plan, to play Estevao on the left and Pedro Neto on the right. And we see that the reason Pedro Neto mainly plays on the right when Reece James is the one deployed as the starter at right back. Uh, and he was in midfield against Manchester United, but in this match with Reece James, I think playing at right back, Neto is the guy who's going to help him a lot defensively. And that's very obvious that he's in there a lot of the times also because of his work rate defensively, moving back as his, ability to play in transition going forward as well. And then Estevao, I think with Cole Palmer not being available for a couple weeks, he just has to start. I think not only the Brighton match, but the two matches afterwards if he's healthy. Hopefully, knock on wood, he is. Just because I think he needs to get a run of games to get up to speed and really start to provide creativity for the side. And I think getting held back a little bit, I think probably to protect himself. But at this point, with the injuries to the team, I think he needs to gain a run of games in order to get more comfortable with his teammates on the pitch in these competitive matches to try to help push Chelsea over the line. And then João Pedro as the 9, I think just speaks for itself until Liam Delap gets back, or if miraculously, Mark Yu gains some trust from the manager, it'll be João Pedro as the 9 as long as he's available to play. And Mark Yu, like I said, doesn't have the trust of the manager, and in all honesty, probably isn't good enough to start in a match like Liverpool or Benfica in the Champions League. I think there might be a slight chance he starts in this match. The only issue and drawback is that he's already played for Sunderland this season, obviously making an appearance off the bench and then scoring a goal in the cup, the Carabao for Sunderland. And so if he plays a match for Chelsea, unfortunately, he's not going to be available to go on loan. And so in the January transfer window. So if the plan is for him to go on loan in January, I don't think we'll see Mark Yu play for the team at all in the coming months, unless it is an absolute emergency and João Pedro was hurt, and Obama obviously being hurt right now, and Tyreek George, who is the nominal striker at the moment, with if João Pedro isn't in that position. I think if those options are unavailable, then we'll see Mark Yu, and then they'll bite the bullet. Or if one of those guys, hopefully that this doesn't happen, hopefully. But if they gain a long-term injury or something, then I think Mark Yu will be given a real chance. If that doesn't happen, it seems like he's just going to be the guy who is there class in case of emergency, which I'm not sure if that was his expectation or if that was made clear to him. I think if that was made clear to him that he would be a break glass in case of emergency type of option, then maybe he would have chose to stay at Sunderland. I'm not sure. I don't know what he was told, obviously, but It's kind of a weird situation. And so I guess we'll see. That it also could depend on Liam Delap's outlook on when he could return from his injury as well. Like if it seems like he's going to return around the new year or in and around that boxing day period, then maybe they really will not play Marquis. But if it turns out that he needs to play longer or needs a longer time to get up to speed again, maybe Marquis is given a real chance. We'll see. Um, the adjustment to the lineup that I think may happen, different from what I am predicted and what I'm preferring, is that maybe we see Andre Santos come off the bench, especially if Romeo Lavia is not fit enough to make the bench yet, just so that there's an option to rotate there. And then we see Estevao as the 10, and then Pedro Neto still being on the right, and then you see Garnacho on the left. I don't think there's a chance that Jamie Gittins really starts in this match. And now that I'm thinking about it, I think that may be a 50-50 chance that that happens. Just because, we see with the start of the season, Moises Caicedo looks a little jaded and, struggles a little bit in the second halves of matches as, he gets a little bit tired. It's good he got mostly a break. I don't think he came on against Lincoln City. I don't remember, but it's good that he got a week between matches basically to help him recover a little bit. Although Enzo Fernandez did play against Lincoln City, he got a good run out, and although he's had some goal contributions to start the season, I've said this before in a couple previous videos. I don't think he's been in the best of form to start the season, and I think that could also have to do with him being a little tired as well. So, as a result, now that I'm thinking about it, like we may see Andre Santos either start for Enzo Fernandez, or maybe he comes off the bench early within 60 minutes for Enzo. I think Moises Caicedo probably plays 90 minutes no matter what, unless God forbid he gets injured or a red card or whatever. But yeah, that could be the situation if, as I said, if Romeo Lavia isn't fit enough to make the bench. The other mention with the starting lineup is that, and Enzo Maresca's second half substitutions, is that we've seen since Liam Delap's injury, João Pedro in the second half of games, however you say that, whatever. We see that João Pedro, especially when he's struggling to get on the ball and make an impact, is dropped to the 10, and then Tyreek George is moved to a striker, to the striker position. I think for this match, no matter what, I don't want to see it, even if it'll help João Pedro get on the ball more. Just because I think they have to get used to, João Pedro has to get used to being the one leading the line on a more consistent basis for 90 minutes, just with him being basically the second choice striker, and right now the first choice striker with Liam Delap out. And as a result, with Cole Palmer also out, like I think there needs to be a little bit of rigidness with his role in the team. And I would like to see Estevao be the main number 10, or it be Enzo Fernandez, if it can be Estevao. As I said, I think João Pedro, said this before, I think he's probably more comfortable as a number 10. But for Chelsea and for this side, I think right now his best role is as the number 9. And I think he's miles better than Tyreek George in that role. Not to say Tyreek George isn't a decent player. I just think he's more naturally a winger, or more of an inside forward coming in from the left-hand side, or a natural winger on the right-hand side holding the width. And so I think it just does a disservice a little bit to Tyreek George as well, because we've seen him score a couple banger goals to save Chelsea against Lincoln City and then Fulham last season. And when he's not played in his most comfortable position, you don't see the best of him. And even with the failed move to Fulham down on deadline day, I just think him being deployed as a striker just does him a little bit of disservice. Although, thinking about it, that's probably his best chance at gaining minutes for Chelsea this season. But in any case, I digress. As I said, I think it needs to be Estevao as the 10, consistently with João Pedro in behind him. And I think that could help the relationship um, a bit as well with João Pedro and whoever is the number 10, because we saw, Cole Palmer and João Pedro as the 10 and the striker really play and have a good partnership there. And so as a result, I think the same thing could happen with Estevao. And so that's what I want to see. Um, Looking back at previous matchups, the two previous matchups, we'll go with the two ones from last season against Brighton. Um, the first one being that crazy 4-2 at home, where Cole Palmer, I think, bagged all four goals, if I remember, with that crazy free kick as well. The other main thing that I remember from that match is actually, I'm pretty sure Rob Sanchez had a bozo moment in that match. If I had, because I think Ruter scored a header of some sort and came up a little groggy, if I remember correctly. And it was due to like some shenanigan with Rob Sanchez where he didn't clear the ball or claim the ball off a cross or a ball in the air or something like that. Those bozo moments from Rob Sanchez kind of blend in at a certain point. But in any case, I'm pretty sure that happened in that 4-2. And then in the reverse fixture away from home, I know that Chelsea got torched in that match. I think it was like 2-0. Probably it was 3-0 actually, because Yankuba Mente, I think, scored a double. But the key goal to open the scoring, I think, was that crazy over the ball pass over the top of Trevor Chalaba's head on the wing, from the keeper onto Matoma, who had an incredible touch and smoked Trevor Chalaba on that play and opened the scoring. And then from there, Minta bagged two goals, one before half, maybe something like that, or right after half, I can't remember. And then they were off and running from there. And so, with this fixture being at home, I hope we see a repeat of that first fixture at home as opposed to the second one. Hopefully, maybe Estevao bags a couple. I'm not sure. Bags a couple goals. We'll see. In terms of my prediction, I think it'll be a high scoring one. I hope it's a high scoring one for two reasons. One, for Chelsea specifically, I don't think they're capable at this point in time with consistently being relied upon to keep a clean sheet against basically anybody. I mean, even that 5-1 route against West Ham to begin the season, they conceded the opening goal to a Lucas Paqueta long shot. And then I think there was that clean sheet against Fulham, but I've said this in that match review, they were a little lucky not to open the scoring with that Josh King chance in which Munoz had that skill move and then stepped on Trevor Chalaba's foot. And, I thought it was a bit of a harsh play. And in any case, I just think at this point in time, Chelsea are prone to conceding chances no matter who the center back pairing is. And so as a result, I think they're going to score a goal or two. And I just hope that with that, we see Chelsea create and convert a lot of chances. I want them to show a bit of firepower, especially against a team who aren't the most solid defensively themselves, if I had to say. That's just based off the eye test. I couldn't tell you stats wise whether that's truly the case, Brighton. But when you're a mid-table side like Brighton are, there's only so much you can do in terms of being the best offensively capable team or the best defensive team. I think it swings and roundabouts for a team like Brighton who continually sell out their best players. I don't mean to be disrespectful in that way. I just think that's just the reality for a team like Brighton. And so as a result, I want to see at home Chelsea put on a feel-good performance, which is what I was hoping to see at Lincoln City in the week, and we didn't see that. And so I hope as a result we see that in this match. But like I said, 3-2 is my prediction. If I had to guess the scores, I'm going to say I think Ruter is healthy, so I think he gets one. And I think Yankuba Mente gets the other for Brighton. In terms of the Chelsea goals, I'm going to say Estevao bags a goal finally. João Pedro, I think, gets on the score sheet as well. And then I'm going to say, just going to pick a defender. I'll say Cucurella off a cross because I think he's going to invert and make runs from midfield. And so I think a cross from wide. I'll say João Pedro from the right hand side puts in a left footed in swinging cross onto Cucurella's head, and he heads one home. And so yeah, I think it'll be 3-2. I think Chelsea will open the scoring hopefully, and from there it results in 3 points and hopefully a good win heading into tough matches before the international break, Benfica and Liverpool. In any case, I look forward to the match. I will be back with a match review afterwards, and hopefully we see 3 points and the team getting back on track. If you've watched the video, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the match review.